Welcome to Pursuing Quality Long-Term Care, an educational podcast for individuals needing long-term care and their families. Join us as we talk with national experts and advocates about strategies you can use in the pursuit of quality long-term care. For decades, Consumer Voice has designated October as Residents' Rights Month. This month is an opportunity to recognize the value of each resident and the importance of treating every resident with dignity and respect. This year's theme, Amplify Our Voices, highlights residents coming together to make their voices heard. In this episode, join us as we speak with two resident advocates. Floyd Hartley is a former nursing home resident who now lives in the community and works as an advocate for all residents, including those transitioning out of facilities. We also spoke with Cindy Napolitan, a current nursing home resident that has lived in two different nursing homes over 6 years and has advocated for herself and others at the local, state, and federal level during that time. Floyd and Cindy discuss how they work to improve conditions of nursing home residents. Their constant effort and advocacy illustrate how residents can use their own voices to make systematic change for consumers in long-term care facilities.
Hi, everyone. Today's podcast is focused on Residents' Rights Month. Residents' Rights Month is an annual event designated by Consumer Voice to honor residents living in all long-term care facilities and those receiving care in their home or community. It's an opportunity to focus on and celebrate the dignity and rights of every individual receiving long-term services and supports. This year, our theme is Amplify Our Voices. This theme, focused on raising resident voices, is empowering and exciting. So much of the work that we do at Consumer Voice focuses on amplifying the voices of long-term care consumers and giving them the tools to advocate on their own behalf. And today's podcast is actually going to focus on two long-term care consumers, a former resident and a current resident, who really exemplify our theme. They both advocate on their own behalves and on the behalf of others in similar situations. Both guests today, Floyd and Cindy, are members of Consumer Voice's Consumer Advisory Council, which is made up of current and former long-term care consumers who advocate in a variety of ways, both working with us at Consumer Voice and working on their own within their communities. Floyd and Cindy are both wonderful advocates, and we're so grateful that they're able to make the time to join us. We're going to start by having a conversation with Floyd, a former resident who now works with other former residents. And again, Floyd, we're so grateful that you were able to join us today. Could you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself and your relationship with long-term care and the work that you do now?
Well, first of all, I was a resident at one time at one of the local nursing homes here in Baltimore, Maryland. So what had happened was that while there was a lawyer from, at that time it was called Maryland Disability Law Center. Right now it's the Disability Rights Maryland. She had came in and she had spoke to one of the residents that I was good friends with, and that resident, she happened to ask the lawyer to come speak with me since we were such good friends. And at that time, she asked me, did I know about community waiver services and an opportunity to move back in the community. And I told her I had no idea about it, and the nursing facility never mentioned it to me. So at that point, there was an opportunity to apply for waiver services and move back into the community. That particular lawyer that worked with Maryland Disability Law Center actually called me one day and said, well, Floyd, you know what? Are you working now? Or are you doing anything with yourself? And at the time, I told her that I had just started working with someone at the Division of Rehabilitation Services to try to find some type of employment. So she said, well, you know what? I think we have something for you to do. We can put you to work. And at that point, I started working with Disability Rights Maryland, advocated. Actually, I was trained along with other advocates to go out to nursing facilities and let them know about community waiver services and how to go about applying. So at that point, I started out going to just the local nursing facilities in Baltimore City And from there, with more training constantly from the law center, which we were meeting like every Monday of the month to update the things that we needed to know about long-term care services, things like the difference between Medicare and Medicaid, the difference between a person having guardianship and someone having power of attorney, and just other related things dealing with long-term care that help empower myself and helping residents in nursing facilities and transitioning. We started helping people with not only moving back into the community, but also with transportation issues. Because once you leave the facility, there were how would you get around? How would you navigate? Also, we had helped individuals to some of the independent living centers, which help individuals also has something called travel training that would help them navigate themselves in and around the city also. And we help people with voting, because a lot of people that are in nursing facilities, they sometimes aren't told that they can still vote.
Right.
So there were several things that we were helping people with while they were in the nursing facilities, and even telling them about some of the things that I had to do when I transitioned out. One was, getting in touch with the Divisional Rehabilitation Services, where they could possibly find some type of employment in the community too. So even with that, the state actually implemented what we were doing as far as helping people transition into the community. And we also had an opportunity to work with the state and doing the same work, but it wasn't as extensive as to what we were doing. So I decided not to work with the state, stay with what I was doing, a group called the Sunshine Folk, because we believed that the sun shines brighter at home. So our thing was that we did not only let them know about community services, we stayed with them from the time that we helped them apply all the way to the time that they moved back into the community. And even then, we assisted individuals with opportunities. We would actually have cookouts for them at the law center to make them, feel, comfortable in the community and being about. We would actually take people out to lunch to let them get a little feel as to what goes on in the community and how to uh, get about in the community. I think one of the most important things about this whole thing, as far as the waiver program, is getting people adjusted to the community, because a lot of people have the thought, well, I'm gonna move back in the community, my family's gonna be with me, I'm gonna have friends along with me, but that doesn't happen. So what happens a
Right.
lot of times, that leaves people all alone and lonely and vulnerable. And we as the Sunshine Folk, we try to not make that happen, whereas we would stay in constant contact with individuals to make sure that they're getting the services that they need. So along with the work as far as trying to help people transition back in the community, I also work with the Ombudsman, which is a statewide agency that intervenes for individuals and nursing facilities to ensure that they're getting the services that they need. So I would usually meet with the ombudsman at least once a month. What I would do is give presentations to the new employees that were becoming ombudsman, and let them know some of the things that they had to look for once they went into the nursing facilities. Things like making sure that there's water on the individual's nightstand, because a lot of individuals in nursing facilities become dehydrated.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure that their call bells are button on their beds, so that if something happened, they could at least at least push the button to have a nurse come in. Um, Even when a mother would go into a facility, just be aware of things like the smell. I mean, sometimes you walk
Right.
down the hallways and if something doesn't smell right, I mean, it could be people just sitting there uh, laying in their feces, and that shouldn't be. They should at least go to the nursing station and say, well, I think this person may have had an accident on themselves. At least can you check them out? And a lot of times, older folks, or any folks that may have behavioral problems, or they may not, are sitting in the hall and they're drugged up. They may be asleep. So
Mm-hmm.
just be aware of people's their posture, their attitude, and things that are going on. So I've just been advocating as much as I can in all aspects of the community, helping people with transportation, helping them with voting, helping them direct themselves as to where they can get the best help in the community, trying to maybe connect them with family and friends and organizations that they can be a part of, which would help their mental state of being just to be a part of and be in the community and doing things, not just sitting at home by themselves. There are
Right.
some folks who are fine with sitting at home by themselves, or not so much by themselves. They don't mind not participating in any type of work or anything of that nature. A lot of individuals are just happy to be in the community, and that's enough with me. It is enough for them just to be in the community, being happy, enjoying themselves.
I I feel like, just listening to you talk, you're advocating as you're speaking, just giving some of those tips. And I think that it resonates more because you lived that experience. You were in a facility, so when we talk about it or when ombudsmen are looking for things, it almost sounds a little bit different. But when you actually speak to those things, I think people recognize it at a different level. And I remember in the past, actually, us having a conversation. I think we were talking about social isolation in nursing homes. And you brought up that same point that a lot of people, when they leave nursing homes, face a level of isolation that they hadn't expected. So I don't want to sound trite in saying it sounds like everything you're doing is really inspiring. I mean, because it sounds like you're really working on multiple levels to make sure people in multiple different stages of long-term care, both people still in facilities and people who have transitioned out, get the services that they really need. Just out of curiosity, because you were on our consumer advisory council even before I started at Consumer Voice, how did you end up getting connected with Consumer Voice?
Yes, I do. I've been connected with for quite some time. Listened to a lot of the dialogue that basically, because I'm in the community and not basically in a nursing home, I kind of sit back and listen to some of the stories that a lot of residents have to give, and um, exactly all the things that they're saying as far as nursing home short staffing, uh, people not answering call bells, just several things that go on, the food being cold. Uh, it's just a numerous thing. Not
Mhm.
getting a bath when you should get a bath. Uh, Not really being taken care of. And I think what happens is, for instance, when I was in the nursing facility, I had to advocate for myself because I was used to living a certain way. And I wanted that respect that I should get,
Right.
and I had to fight for that. Sometimes I needed to go to the bathroom. I wasn't able to go on my own. I needed some help, and I couldn't get that help at one point. So I ended up calling the police. And after I did that, they were like, "Well, why did you do that?" I said, "Because I needed help, and you would not help me." Even the nurses, I could be in the bathroom, need some assistance, and they would come and say, "Well, Mr. Hartley, what is it that you need?" I said, "I need some assistance." And they would say, "Well, hold on, I'm going to go get one of these." I said, "No, you can help me right now. Why should you have to go get an aid when you have the ability to help me?" So it's those type things. And even one day I was sitting in the hallway, we had a meeting uh, with all the residents, and the administrator specifically said, "Well, if you see a call light on, uh, every each and every person that sees that is supposed to answer that light." So I just happened to be sitting in the hallway one day, and the administrator and some of her higher staff, I guess it was the ownership of the facility, had walked by. So I said, "Excuse me." I said, "There's a light on. I mean, you're the administrator. These are things that you said. Okay, answer the light, please. You know, you specifically said that yourself." So those type things happen. I think one of the best things I did, I became, pretty good friends with the administrator because of some of the advocacy things I had did was because when I first came there, actually, uh, and the first time I got a chance to take a shower, I went to the shower room and there was feces all over the floor. And I went to another shower, there was dirty linen. And I went to the administrator and I said, "Well, why is this happening? Why are people taken into places where it's dirty, it's unclean, it's unsanitary?" So what happened after that was that maybe a week or two later, he made sure that all the bathrooms were power washed
Wow.
every week. Made sure that they were clean, they were washed down, they were sanitized every week. This was done. So that was something that I helped and other residents helped get done. But I think one of the best things that I did with the administrator after we became pretty not so much tight, but he, we respected each other and he respected me, was to, yes, say, "Mr. Hartley, I would like to, if you don't mind, we're hiring new aides. Would you come in and speak with them as far as what they will be what they will be doing and how they should be doing it?"
That's
I,
awesome.
I think one of the things that I told them was, if you're here for $1, you're in the wrong place. But if you're here to genuinely care about the residents, then you're welcome. Not too many of them stayed. And, but that's what it's about. It's giving care and
Right.
time to the residents. But when you don't have enough staff, uh, that's where the downfall is, especially on the weekends. And until the laws are changed, until they are changed, and the consumer voices have a lot to do with making that change, making sure that it's done through advocacy, through state government and higher up to make sure these things are done. It takes time, it's going to take time, but I think the consumer voices will be a very instrumental part in making that change.
What advice do you have for people who might be listening right now who are residents or long-term care consumers to get started in advocating at any level? I mean, because I think, a lot of what you do now is really advocating at a high level, but you've also talked a lot about just having, I mean, it's almost the courage to speak up while in your facility and saying, like, this is not right. We deserve respect. So what advice do you have for someone who's listening and sort of wants to start advocating?
Well, I would say to once you start advocating, don't stop at one particular level. Uh, go from one to the next. Go as far as you can, as far as making your voice heard. I used to give a lot of residents the advice of, well, I went to the the administrator and they said blah blah blah. But if they're not listening, who is above the administrator? You go to the establishment, the owner of these facilities, you make your voice heard, and you reach out to your local state government. Start there, consistently do that until they understand the severity of what's going on. And you go from there, and your senators are very powerful people. They can get things done, but it has to keep going to the legislature, making sure that it's on the docket that these things have to be done. You go to the Center for Medicaid Services, who have a lot of influence on how things are done, and make sure that it's being heard. It has to be done not just one time, not just next week.
Right.
It has to be done consistently. I always say, as they say, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. That's what you have to be. You have to worry someone to make sure that your voice is being heard.
I think that's the best advice. I mean, I know I talk to a lot of people who are either family members or residents who say, well, I did this and nothing happened, or I called my state legislator and nothing happened. And I know it's incredibly frustrating for people a lot of the time to feel like you're taking this big step and you're doing something and no one's listening. But I think you're right. You have to just keep doing it. You know, if you make one phone call and nobody responds, you make that second phone call and that third phone call and that fourth phone call and you send an email. But I think that is great advice. My last question for you is, listening to everything that you do, what is the most rewarding part for you?
Wow. I think the most rewarding part is just to see the smile on people's faces once they have transitioned back in the community. It just gives me a lot of delight. I mean, because I know how it was when I was in the community and moving back in. But my thought has always been, uh, when your hand is closed, nothing can come in. But when it's open, you can receive. And I just uh, I just enjoy doing this. I mean, I've been doing it for since 2005, and it's nothing more rewarding than to see somebody transition back in the community, and for them to say thank you, Mr. Hartley. Thank you for letting me know about this program. Thank you for helping me along the way, and that, to me, just a thank you is really rewarding.
Well, we want to give you a huge thank you both for the work that you're doing and for joining us today, because I think a lot of people who listen are going to be really inspired what you're doing. So thank you again for coming and joining us today.
Thank you.
Well, Floyd is an advocate who used to live in a nursing home and is currently outside of nursing homes working with residents who are still living inside and residents who have moved out. Next, we're going to talk to Cindy. Cindy lives currently in a skilled nursing facility and does similar work from her nursing home. So, Cindy, you're living in a nursing home, and I think by self-definition, you're an advocate. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, how long you've been living in a skilled nursing facility, and how you got started doing some of the advocacy that you do?
Yes, thanks, Jocelyn. Some of my background, I am a fixer. I have always had jobs in the past where I would go in and try to make the job better, the position better, fix any issues that were happening in any particular job. I call myself a jack of all trades. I've done brokerage work, I've been a pharmacy technician, tax preparer, you name it, I've probably done it. Um, my daughter and I were diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. I was diagnosed in '89, my daughter 10 years later. My husband passed away. It's going to be 6 years. And we tried to stay at home and have people come and take care of us. Because our home wasn't accessible, that was difficult. So we went into long term care. We went to one facility for 2.5 years where I was the president of resident council. And this home was not wheelchair accessible. We could not get into our bathrooms. It also had a community shower. After the pandemic started, they turned that facility into the COVID unit and brought people from across the state to that facility. So we decided that would not be an option for us. So we moved to another nursing home that was owned by the same corporation. We have been at this nursing home for almost 3.5 years. This nursing home is wheelchair friendly. We have our private bathroom, and I thought this would be a great place to live. During the since the time that we've lived here, I have advocated for improvements in all areas of the facility. Um, Certainly, there's been a staffing issue. Um, and it's not just because of pandemic, it was also a problem prior to, but it was really um, something that we noticed a lot more after the pandemic. We were losing people left and right. So advocating for myself and my daughter is something that I do mostly on a daily basis. We experience staff shortages. We wake up in the morning. We don't know if everybody's going to show up for work. There are days when we wonder, are we going to be able to get out of bed today? We both need full care. Um, are we going to get a shower? Are we going to get our food on time? Is it going to come hot? Because there may be a staff shortage in our dining room and kitchen also. Are we going to get clean linen? So these are daily worries for each
Yeah.
of us and for other advocates. And our residents deserve to have their needs handled on a daily basis. They need their showers, right? They need to be fed. If we're short in the dining room, I see people sitting there with a plate in front of them, unable to feed themselves, and no one is available to come and feed them. They sit there for quite a while. Um, there is just a feeling that we have no control, and
Right.
that is a terrible feeling to have.
So, so I mean that's actually a really, I mean, that is a terrible feeling to have, and I think that's a feeling and emotion expressed by a lot of residents that we talk to, that you don't have control over your own day or over your own life. And so I guess my next question, you've talked about a lot of things that, again, I think a lot of people come to us with, whether it's family members or residents, talking about the fact that there isn't enough staffing, talking about the fact that, sometimes meals aren't delivered, sometimes they aren't
Mhm.
delivered at all of these things. And a lot of times we'll tell people, okay, well, these are some things, reach out to your ombudsman, you can do this, you can do that. And it is hard. I mean, I think it's really hard for people, particularly for residents, as they try to actually take that step to advocate. But I know you have advocated successfully in a bunch of different areas. And so can we just talk a little bit about some of what, how you do push back in situations like that when there isn't enough staff in your facility? Who do you go to?
Right.
Who do you talk to? And when other things go wrong, what steps do you take?
Well, my first step is to always go to my nurse and explain the situation and what my needs are. And if she or he, they're not able to help, then we have a grievance system where we go to our social worker and actually put it in writing that there's a particular grievance, no matter what it is. It could be as little as missing laundry to abuse and neglect. Um, so that is our next step. If I still don't get any satisfaction from that, a lot of times my grievance forms are not answered by our nursing management. So then I have to take that a step further. I have to go to our administrator and meet with that person and explain what happened. I've also kept journals, journaling when I've been given my medication, when they've ran out of my medication, what they've told me. Uh, Recently, I had the experience of having an abscess and needing to go to the dentist. The
Mhm.
dentist gave me a prescription for 800 milligrams of ibuprofen. They did not fill the prescription, nor did they have any in the building. They checked all of the med cards, all of the nursing cards, no medication available, which is totally unreal to me. Why
Yeah.
wouldn't a skilled nursing facility have the supplies that are needed for all of the residents? So they finally filled the prescription within a week, and I did have to go to different people. I had to talk to my ombudsman. Uh, and it was finally taken care of. It was a week before I got the prescription filled.
Wow.
So you just have to take the different steps. Sometimes I have to go all the way to the corporate level and talk to the corporate compliance officer, especially if it's a severe violation or neglect. Um, I've done that step before as well.
So how do you do that? Just for another resident or a family member listening, do you just call the corporate office, or how do you get in touch with somebody and make them listen to you?
Yes, I called the corporate office. I got email addresses. I did a letter to our corporate compliance officer. I sent him a copy of my journal.
Mhm.
I sent him previous letters that I had sent to the corporation asking for help on um, making things better for the residents here. And I finally got his attention, and he made an appointment to come and see me. And we discussed a lot of the issues that are happening.
Mhm.
And after that, some things improved. But, a month later, we're back to the same
Right.
problems.
I think, a lot of times when we at Consumer Voice talk to family members and residents, we tell them to do exactly what you're doing, but it can be really hard. I mean, it can be really hard when you send an email and no one answers it, or when you call someone and they don't call you back. So,
Right.
I mean, I think a lot of what I'm hearing is, what we say to people, but it can sometimes feel hollow when we're saying it to people. You have to be so persistent. I mean, you have to keep
Yeah.
going. Can you talk a little bit about some of the other things that you've done, some other ways you've sort of worked to make change at your facility?
Um, well, resident council
Hmm.
meetings are something that we do on a monthly basis. We do have issues with how they're run. Um, we have a, a director who is not knowledgeable about how to run a meeting and what the different regulations are. our last meeting, she invited our DON to come to our meeting. And of course, when the DON came in uninvited by residents, nobody spoke up and talked about anything.
Wow.
So I was able to get a copy of the regulation from somebody at Consumer Voice so that I can print that off and present that to our director of activities during our meeting this week to get them to follow the rules and the regulations to protect our residents. This is Resident Rights Month, and they constantly need to be reminded that we do have rights. And
Yeah.
that is one of our rights to make our own decisions during a meeting.
Right.
And some of the other things that I've been able to do is we have a new ombudsman who has not been certified yet. She's gone through the process and she's been unable to come into our building and handle any of our issues. So I'm advocating for her to get her certification. And I contacted our state ombudsman to ask for her help and her support to get that done because we've had the surveyors in the building this week on issues that she may have been able to handle. So I recently had a meeting with the state surveyor, the state ombudsman, and we're going to develop a really good relationship. And she may be coming to visit our facility later this year. And I really appreciated everything that she had to say. And it's just another way you have to reach as many people as you can.
Right.
I think you have to have a lot of diplomacy. You
Mm-hmm.
can't just scream and yell. You have to find a way to help them help you,
Right.
right?
Well, my next question was going to be, what advice do you have for other people in your situation who want to do this type of advocacy? And I think that is probably the best advice you could give someone, right? That you kind of have to
Yeah,
behave diplomatically, particularly as you move up the chain and talk to people, because
right.
it's going to be harder to
Absolutely.
listen to people who are screaming and shouting, even though you have every right to be screaming and shouting over
Right.
some of this.
But I found that that doesn't get the job done. You
Right.
have to have a certain way of asking, um, and try to let them know, what if your mother was going through this? What if your child
Right.
was going through this? What would you do? And if you see what's going on in this nursing home, would you send your mother here
Right.
or your child? Um, so you have to really make them walk in your shoes
That makes
or
a lot of
roll
sense.
around in a wheelchair like I do.
So let's take a minute and talk, because you do this advocacy. And I think that's probably how you got started with other things that you do, but you do a lot at, we say local level, but we're talking about like at the very individual level. But you also now do advocacy at a higher level.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think of everything from being part of Consumer Voices Consumer Advisory Council to the fact that on your own you write letters and send them and get responses and things like that from a much higher level than just the administrator in your nursing home. So can you talk a little bit sort of about that and how you took that step and some of the work you do, at a more
Um,
systemic level?
I think um, the initial opportunity to get involved was with National Consumer Voice. And then I started getting phone calls from news organizations, AARP, USA Today, to um, contribute my thoughts on that. And then I got involved with several other groups. There's a group called Live Oak Project that is working on advocating for residents. One of the things that I'm going to bring up this week during our meeting is Texas recently upped their personal needs allowance for people living in a nursing home on Medicaid. A lot of our states get as little as maybe $40 a month.
Right.
That means that for the entire month, they only have $40 to be able to maybe get their hair done, buy over the counter things like their kind of shampoo that they like. They
Right.
have to use their own money to do that. Some of the largest state PNA is Colorado. They almost get $100 a month. So Texas recently upped theirs from $60 to $75. There was another group here that advocated for that, Texas Caregivers. So my goal is to find out how they did that, what the steps are, and to make sure that each state knows how to accomplish that, because that is not enough money for
No.
someone living in a nursing home. That you have to buy your own clothing. You have to buy, everything. They don't provide. A nursing home is not going to provide you with everything that you need. So that is something that I'm advocating for, is making sure that all states know how to do that.
That's great. Um, yeah, I mean, it's funny because, a lot of what we do at Consumer Voice is, advocating on behalf of residents, but also trying to get and give residents the tools to advocate on behalf of themselves. And I feel like you
Yeah.
are sort of the picture perfect image of how that can work at times. Because I know that when we have events or when we are talking to CMS or when we are talking to legislators, a lot of times we can come to them with data and numbers and information, but you can come to them with your personal story, with the actual lived experience of what you're living with. And that takes it to a different level. And like you said, I think, you know, advocates, ombudsmen, people can go and say, that this isn't, a sustainable situation, that there isn't enough staff in this facility, that this isn't happening right. But the way you described it, being able to have someone walk in your shoes or roll in your wheelchair, I think kind of hits them at a different level. So I think the advocacy you're doing is incredible and inspiring, and we really appreciate you being here today.
Well, there must be a reason why I'm here. And I really believe that I'm here for a reason and to advocate for others, especially our residents that can't advocate for
Right.
themselves. They need, a lot of them don't even have families that can help
Right.
them. So those are the people that um, I think about, and I hope that other residents will get involved. If you see something, you say something. If you hear something, you say something to administrator or to your state surveyors. I recently found out that I can file a complaint 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I was encouraged, if something comes up, you call immediately and file your complaint. Um, so especially if it's a situation where somebody could get hurt,
Right.
you want to get someone to handle that immediately.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Cindy. We really
You're
appreciate it.
welcome. You're welcome.
Thanks for joining us on Pursuing Quality Long-Term Care. This podcast is a program of the National Consumer Voice for Quality Long-Term Care. Make sure to visit our website, theconsumervoice.org/pursuingquality, where you can subscribe to the podcast, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and find more information and resources. If you enjoy the podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next episode.